IB Nation. We are ready to rock. We are ready to roll. Vince has got his, like, you look like kind of like the leprechaun or, one of those. There you go.
There you
Get
go.
your dukes up. Get
That's
your
right.
dukes up.
Looks like I'm milking a cow doing this.
That's right.
It's going to be a meme. Sorry, everybody. My bad.
I don't know about you. It's kind of been a day for me. So
okay.
let's get the atmosphere up in this thing.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Usually it's me that has the day, so I'm glad I could be here for you.
I appreciate it. I think I've said this before, but we started the day with pretty crappy weather.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, like I have become more susceptible, like it just when the day starts like that, not that I consciously do it. It's just like my energy level has been low all day, trying to get going, trying to get motivated, all these different things, mood disrupted, all that kind of stuff.
Man.
So the adrenaline gets flowing when we do the show, though. So
absolutely. And
it always gets better here.
I've always been curious about people whose mood is so severely affected by the weather. And you have now joined the club that includes my wife. So congratulations.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that. Is that always been a thing for her? Or is it fairly recent?
It has always been a thing for her. So like if it's like a gloomy type of day, she's kind of in a gloomy kind of mood, that kind of, the sun is out, she's ready to go. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, it is Mailbag Day, so if you're in the chat right now, throw your questions in the old mailbag. Wanted to start off talking a little bit. We haven't talked a ton about NC State on this particular show yet this week, and kind of Wednesday is when we really start turning our focus toward the weekend. And obviously, a great deal of the conversation the rest of the week is going to be on the quarterback, Brennan Armstrong.
Yes.
Mobile quarterback, Virginia transfer. And remember a couple years ago, Notre Dame went out there to Virginia, and he was having a pretty good season, but he was injured, and he ended up not playing against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame won that game pretty handily. And there were people like, oh, what if Brennan Armstrong would have played? How would that have affected it? And all that, different kind of stuff. And now, of course, just like Sam Hartman, he's a sixth-year guy. They're both sixth-year quarterbacks, and they're both using their grad transfer to go to new schools this year. So what do you think of this Brennan Armstrong challenge? He ran for nearly 100 yards, almost half of NC State's 224 yards in their opener, and 2 touchdowns in that opening 24-14 win over UConn.
I'm about halfway through that game. I've been watching that game. I'm about halfway through it, and I can tell you, if Notre Dame fans were upset with the way Notre Dame started, NC State fans were probably crapping their pants as they were watching UConn just rip through their defense. Now, as far as Brennan Armstrong is concerned, he's a good quarterback, right? I mean, he's a good college quarterback. I don't think he's going to be anything else but that. He's a good college quarterback, probably the same knock that Sam Hartman had coming into Notre Dame, and that's fine. That's deserved. He is their offense, period. And NC State has not been a great running team in the past. They are a running threat with him at quarterback, and Notre Dame didn't handle some QB. They haven't handled QB runs, in recent history very well. Right, I think we can all agree on that, right?
Well, Caleb Williams, they didn't, but I remember like Drake May was supposed to be the North Carolina quarterback, was supposed to be a big threat. Remember, like first series, he had a decent run early on, got a first down, and then really they corralled him the rest of the game.
Fair enough. Here's the bottom line: this team will go as far as Brennan Armstrong takes them, right?
Yeah.
And the way to limit what he does is to force him to be an actual quarterback, which means
keep him in the pocket,
having to throw the football, because he is not that good at throwing the football. Right? He's a very average thrower of the football. And so if Notre Dame wants to win handily on Saturday, they've got to keep him in the pocket. If they do that, it's game over. It's game over.
I agree. And it's really about contained. It's about, keep the edge, set the edge, all that different stuff, funnel him inside. There are decisions, like always, anytime you have a mobile quarterback, that are going to have to be made about how much man-to-man can you play? How much zone should you play? Because obviously, if you're playing man-to-man, that means your DBs and linebackers are running the other way, in most cases with their backs to the quarterback. And if he sees a big green open space, all he's got to do is take off and, make a theoretically, most of the time, slower defensive lineman or two miss. And then the next thing you know, he's 15 or 20 yards downfield.
Right. Yep. Absolutely agree. And look, he's dangerous with his legs, and his legs are what make him a good quarterback because it can set up his passing, and things like that. My opinion, Notre Dame can stack the box and go man to man with these receivers and put them on an island. And of course, you're going to mix it up every now and again, and you're going to mix up the looks and things of that nature.
You can play man under, you do some different stuff.
Absolutely,
yeah.
But you don't have to give extra to the defensive backfield. You need to focus on Brennan Armstrong and don't let him run wild. Yeah. If they can do that, I'm telling you, this is not going to be that close. It's just not.
And like the Caleb Williams thing, it was Caleb Williams, and he won the Heisman Trophy. He was literally
he can sling the ball. You got to kind of pick your poison
right.
with him.
And the thing with him wasn't even necessarily as much the running that he did downfield, just his ability to extend plays and elude the initial rush enough to give himself time and still make throws downfield. He still ran for some yards, obviously, but to me it was with Caleb Williams, it was more again the latter, the extending of the plays and still making plays with his arms that really made him so dangerous. And as you said, Brennan Armstrong is not going to complete 70% of his passes like Caleb Williams, or 70+%. He's going to be much closer to the 60 and below percentage. The key is kind of making him make some mistakes. And as you said, stand in the pocket and have to be a passer and not let him out of that pocket.
Right. Because he's not a poised passer. He's just not. I mean, he can make the easy throws and things of that nature, and that's fine. You can give him all the easy throws he wants. Like it's not going to hurt you, right? I mean, he's going to hurt you with his legs.
Well, and the other thing, and Marcus Freeman was very complimentary of the receivers at his press conference this week. And I mean, he's going to be complimentary of everyone because you're not going to throw up bulletin board material unless, you're Brian Kelly, which we'll talk about later in the show, by the way. But I'm
really curious to hear what this audio is, by the way.
Oh, you haven't heard it?
No.
Oh, I'm
excited. I saved myself for you, Sean.
Oh, well. Let's wait a while. I totally lost my train of thought. My point was against UConn, and DJ says the North Carolina State podcast said it was a hard-fought victory over UConn.
He's not wrong.
It was. I don't think people probably thought it was going to be as close as it was, though, right? 24-14. I wasn't expecting that. I thought that NC State would win a little bit more handily than that. It was a road game, but it's UConn. It's NC State. What do we make of either one of those teams coming out? But their receivers only averaged a shade over 9 yards per reception in that game. They had a couple guys who had 11 yards per catch. I think the longest pass play was 19 yards against UConn in that game. And so that kind of speaks to me, especially when you look at the matchup with Notre Dame secondary. I think it is a huge check mark in Notre Dame's favor when you look at that matchup, Notre Dame secondary versus NC State's receivers.
And that's why I'm saying you don't want to devote a bunch of resources to the defensive backfield, right? And one of the posters, I think it was Josh, said, I'm still having he would still have a deep safe. Of course, you'd still have a safety. I'm not saying that you're going to put everybody in the box and just go one-on-one across the board. Always have a deep safety. I have no problem with that. But you don't want to devote a bunch of resources to the secondary. It's just not necessary. Now, will there be times that you rush 3, drop 8 in certain situations and things like that? Sure, of course. That's fine. Because you don't want to give him the same look. He's not a moron. And neither is the coaching staff at NC State. You don't want to give him the same look every single time. But more often than not, I'm devoting more energy to stopping Armstrong's legs than I am to his arm. I just don't trust his arm to win them the football game. That's the deal.
I completely agree. It's a little bit. He's going to be better, obviously, than like a Navy triple option quarterback, but it's a little bit of the same thing. It's more sort of athleticism, ability, fairly strong arm, but again, not the most accurate arm, I think, and relies on his legs to make a lot of things happen. Since we're talking about NC State, I think this is a good one. If you were advising NC State defense, best strategy to defend against Hartman, similar to contain Armstrong in the pocket, what is your advice?
Well, you got to mix things up. I mean, you've got to try to confuse Sam Hartman a little bit. You got to keep him on his toes, right? You're not going to be able to stack the box because then he's going to pick you apart with his arm. And it's not just Sam Hartman that you're trying to stop. You also got to remember the 5 running backs that Notre Dame has along with their offensive line. And so it's going to be tough. You've got to mix it up. I would run probably a nickel most of the time. And pray I can slow down the run game. You've got to make Sam Hartman beat you. I still think that's the strategy that most teams are going to have against Notre Dame because what is Notre Dame's identity? Run the ball, punch you in the mouth, that kind of a thing. So I think most teams are going to try to limit the run game for Notre Dame. And then Sam Hartman's just going to have his way with defenses because there's going to be a lot of one-on-one coverage. There's going to be, some safeties peeking in the box, all of those different things. Notre Dame has the best of both worlds. They've got a dynamic quarterback who can put the ball all over. He's never thrown to less than 9 receivers in a game, okay, at Notre Dame, or 9 different receivers, excuse me. And then you've got this running game that basically the running backs did all the work last week, and they still rushed for over 200 yards. So it's kind of a pick your poison. But if I was a defensive coordinator, I would try to slow down the run game first.
Well, and you look at NC State's defense, they're going to run a 3-3-5, similar to what Navy was doing. So on the one hand, you've at least got some familiarity from Sam Hartman, but two bigger picture. Again, this is a veteran 6th-year guy who is a proven passer, whereas Brennan Armstrong, again, there's a little bit more raw. Maybe you can make the case that he has more overall raw ability than Sam Hartman, but Sam Hartman is the much more refined passer. And just look at, what you talked about, the fact with the 9 receivers that he is connected with, he has the ability to get it to the open man. And think back to when Ian Book was here. And if opposing defenses would drop 8 into coverage and only rush 3, that's like that was panic time for Ian Book. Yeah. It's tuck it and run. Yep. And I think you saw some of that with Drew Pine last year as well. That's not Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman recognizes that right away. Even pre-snap, he knows that is probably what is going to be coming based on what he's seeing. Because again, you've got a 6th-year guy out there who recognizes those things both before the snap. Like you can tell he's spent a lot of time watching film. And the fact that people want to use this, the NC State past experience against him because of the fact that he's thrown 6 interceptions in his 3 career games against NC State, but he's also seen this defense. He was running a different offense, but he has seen this defense. So he's got a lot of familiarity with that. And I just think that Sam Hartman's ability to diagnose and see things so quickly, go through his progression so quickly, not get stuck, I think that's a huge advantage for him. So I think and again, then when you fall back on the fact that Notre Dame has such a good running game and he's got the ability pre-snap to check in and out of stuff, I think it's a really tough matchup for a team like NC State. When you're talking about the bigger boys on the schedule, I think it changes a little bit. But when you're talking about these kind of matchups, I think it's just a huge advantage for Hartman and the Irish.
Yep. Can't disagree with that. I mean, I think NC State's defense is their calling card in theory, but what I saw UConn do to this NC State defense, it's week 1, take it for what it's worth. It's week 1, but they didn't really have an issue at times running the football against NC State. And as a former offensive coordinator, whenever I saw a 3 front, I salivated when I knew that I had a good offensive line and a good running back, because You're not going to cover up my guards, so my guards are going to have a free release to the second level to get after those linebackers, and then I'm going to hand the ball off to the 4 guys that are healthy for Notre Dame. This is going to be a run fest. It's going to be a run fest.
And it should be a run fest. There have been times in the past where some of these odd front teams have given Notre Dame some fits. Now, that was a couple of offensive line coaches ago, and so far, Joe Rudolph looks like he's got things figured out. We could have seen a little bit better movement, I think, from the guards last week. But
the offensive line did not play great as a whole, right? As a group. I'm hoping that was a little bit of complacency, coming off the Dublin trip and all of those different things. The bottom line is, I think this offensive line is more talented than NC State's defensive line, and they should manhandle. Now, the one thing that Notre Dame did do very well, in my opinion, overall, in last game was pass protect. Yes. Sam Hartman didn't have to do a whole lot in the pocket. Yeah, there was a couple things, but he did fine with that. And he will continue to do fine with that. And so, Sam Hartman's going to have a day. There's no doubt about it. I think these running backs are going to have a day. The biggest question mark going into this game, to me, is NC State. What's your offense going to be able to put up against Notre Dame's defense?
Yeah.
It's not going to be low scoring. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Ray says NC State's going to drop guys in the box and leave their talented corners in man coverage against Notre Dame's receivers. Receivers are going to have opportunities if they can release off the line of scrimmage. Well, I mean, I don't completely disagree with that. I think there'll be at least some of that. But again, I'm not worried in Sam Hartman's ability to find the open man. They're not all going to be blanket covered all the time. I'm not.
If they go, I hope and pray, Ray, that NC State decides, let's go man coverage the majority of the time against Notre Dame. Come on now, let's do this.
You're going to see some deep shots at that. You're going to see some deep throws that we haven't seen so far. That's because that's part of why we haven't seen as many of the deep passes that we've seen so far, because these guys are playing deep safeties and they're trying to keep everything in front of them. And they've done a decent job of that for the most part. But, look at the 38-second drill at the end of the first half. There were obvious breakdown coverages that we didn't see at other times, because then you force tempo on them and they're reeling a little bit. And Sam Hartman's going to make you pay. When the game is on the line, I love watching Hartman. We said this going back to the blue gold game. When the lights come on, that's when this guy is his best. And that's what we've seen so far. And he'll I just think he's going to pick them apart personally. Yeah. And then I think that the run game is going to mix in there, and it's going to end up, there's going to be, like you said, there's going to be some points scored, but I think that Notre Dame is going to have a pretty handy advantage by the time it's all said.
Let's say that NC State's corners are so good that they lock down Notre Dame's receivers. Let's pretend we'll put that in the it's happening category.
Okay.
Notre Dame's running backs are going to receive the ball as well, and they're going to be matched up against linebackers. Who gets the advantage on that one? That's a Notre Dame advantage all the way, guys. I'm telling you, there's not a linebacker in the country that can line up, or there's very few linebackers in the country, and none of them play for NC State, that can line up with Notre Dame's running backs and stay with them in the pass game.
NC State has a handful of athletes who match up man-to-man with Notre Dame on the defensive side of the ball. They don't have 5 or 6 who can all match up at the same time.
Exactly.
There's going to be a lot of mismatches, I think.
Yes, there. And guess what? Your 6th-year senior quarterback with a boatload of starts under his belt is going to find whoever's open, because there's going to be a weak link someplace. And it's going to be awesome to see. The Peyton Wilson disrespect. Sorry, Ryan. It's just a fact.
Should I address this, Vince? I'll leave it up to you.
I mean, you should. Yeah, calmly.
Look, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, because there's a thread started on the message board. I'll just say this, we go into all the insiders that we have, we're not paying them to be here. I ask them, some say yes, some don't respond. Some give you the big runaround, and maybe you're lucky to get 10 minutes. That's happened already this season. So, but I'll just say, one, I'm grateful for when they do say yes and they come on. Two, in the case of NC State, like there's not a whole lot of coverage of NC State football. If someone wanted to get a Notre Dame insider, whatever, there are literally like 30 plus people, a pool of 30 plus people that you could find.
And yet some podcasts still strike out.
And yeah, that's what I hear. Like,
wow.
The fact that you would even call that an insider, I don't know where that comes from. But look, don't know what's going to happen until the mics go live. And obviously the information that we got out of that is not what any of us would have wanted. Unfortunately, said insider does at least work for a credible news organization, a newspaper in that area. We didn't go out and find, a blogger hanging out on the corner, or some guy who calls himself a blogger / insider, like you were just referring to, Vince. So, and it happens sometimes. It happens. I've done a lot of those, and that was not a very desirable situation. So all we can do is the best we can.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say. You want to do a mailbag?
Good. Wow. Absolutely. I've been starring stuff like crazy over here. Let's go.
Right. Let's make it happen. Let's start out with Tyler. Thanks for the super chat, Tyler. Let's say Texas beats Alabama. What's going to be more annoying, hearing Texas are back or the Bama dynasty is over?
100% it's the Texas people about we're back. Because if you're not a Notre Dame fan, then you're really sick and tired of hearing Notre Dame, we're back. And as a non-Texas fan, I'm sick of hearing Texas, we're back. I think those two are kind of similar, if I'm being honest. And so I can't stand hearing Texas say that they're back, because they haven't been in a very long time. And, the Bama dynasty isn't over until it's over. So let's cool our jets on that one. It's going to take a lot more than one win for Texas to be back.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Texas is back is going to be more annoying, because every time Texas wins a game, it seems like you get Texas is back. I mean, they tried to make Texas back last year when, they played a close game against Alabama, and then look at, at what happened afterwards. The Texas is back is always going to be annoying. Like, I think we can all live with the Alabama dynasty is over if that actually happens, right? Like that I don't think that's going to annoy too many people other than Alabama.
Yeah.
People. So that's it. And no, this was what we were just talking about was in no way a shot at Pete Sampson. I've got no problem with Pete, and like that had nothing to do with that.
Let me be very specific here. It is no way a shot to anybody that's actually on the
no
beat.
One who's actually on the beat.
Yes. that's what I'm saying. Yes. Like nobody that I've ever met in my 20 seasons of covering Notre Dame football, I am not referring to any one of those people. There you go.
Yeah. Someone started a thread on the Champions Lounge, our boards today, and there is an NC State interview with someone calling themselves a Notre Dame insider who apparently lives in Ohio and has never actually been on the beat here. So that's what that was in reference to. It's about nobody, absolutely nobody who is actually on the Notre Dame beat. That's who we were throwing shade at. Someone calling themselves an insider who's never been on the beat.
Right.
Big difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Tim, am I correct that it seems Notre Dame is still more vulnerable inside on defense? Production seemed like the Tennessee State quarterback was able to gash in the middle.
Did they get too many yards up the middle with the quarterback? Yep, they sure did. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't use the word vulnerable. I wouldn't. Based on the stats and everything, I would not call them vulnerable. I mean, they had 89 yards rushing. You know what I mean? And rushing the ball quarterback wise, Bryant was 6 carries for 29 yards, and Ellis was 2 carries for 0 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So
and most of the yards for Bryant came on that one run, basically.
Right. And he had a long run of 13,
yeah,
right? So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. So concerning slightly, yes, it is, because there were times where I was like, are you serious? Like, really, we're going to give him that many yards? So yes, there's a bit of a concern. I wouldn't say vulnerable. I think that's a little bit strong, because at the end of the day, they were not successful at it.
Yeah, Ray says Notre Dame blitz right past the quarterback on several occasions. I felt like, that is one that's true, and that's something that Marcus Freeman obviously said you can't do. And that's what,
right.
Like, I wonder, I know Al Golden likes to blitz. I just wonder if you'll see as much of it this week when you've got an actual dual threat quarterback back there who can really hurt you if you blitz right past him like that. I felt like even though they were blitzing, I still felt like it was kind of a vanilla blitz, like a vanilla look that they were giving Tennessee State last week. They weren't doing anything extraordinary. They weren't going to show anything that they want to actually show up against North Carolina State this week, or Ohio State in 2 weeks. Those kind of opponents. I just felt like it was a general, like I was a bit disappointed that the defensive line wasn't more disruptive on its own. Not that they didn't have moments where they were disruptive, but again, I just felt like it was a fairly vanilla approach defensively against Tennessee State.
Yeah, agreed. Yep. And they need to do better at their blitzing. You know what I mean? They need to be better. There's no doubt about it. And they will be, because they didn't blitz at all really against Navy. You know what I mean? So this is their first time against a spread offense and all of those different, it's okay. It's okay.
So what do you think about this question from David Jones? If Armstrong is the key to stopping NC State, will it be an Al Golden blitz fest?
No, I hope not. Well, I hope not. I don't know what the game plan is, but you are going to have to keep him on his toes, and you're going to have to bring some heat. You're going to have to heat him up every now and again. There's no doubt about it. Blitz fest? No, I hope that is not the case. I do not want it to be a blitz fest, because that's when he can sneak out and you lose contain. When if they're going to blitz, they need to be able to cover all the gaps. They need to keep contain. If they do it that way, then that's fine. But I worry about that term blitz fest. I do not want that at all.
Well placed, well timed. I'm more concerned about quality over quantity when it comes to blitzing. Do it at the right time, and make it successful, rather than doing what we were just talking about, where the blitzers are running past the quarterback and that.
And they're going to be they're going to be dialed in to Armstrong. Like, they know that he is the catalyst for this entire offense. They're going to be dialed into him. So I don't, he is a focus. He's got to be a defensive focus for sure. Right. And so I don't think they're going to overlook what he's able to do with his legs.
Yeah. All right. Question from James. Interesting one. Let's just say, which Notre Dame defensive player would be missed the most if he was not to play for the rest of the season? Who would you go with?
People aren't going to like this, but I'm going to go with JD Bertrand.
I concur.
I think he would be missed the most, not only from a production standpoint, on the stat sheet, but I think also from just a leadership standpoint. He's one of the captains, but from a, the ND Insider said that Maris Leofau is the heart and soul of the defense. Disagree. I think it's JD Bertrand is the heart and soul of the defense. And if you rip out the heart and soul of the defense, I think you're going to have an issue.
Completely agree. I don't disagree with that at all. I do realize that there is still a lot of sometimes misguided venom directed at JD, but hey, look, the schedule is ramping up now. We're going to find out who JD Bertrand is. We're going to find out who Maris Leofau is. If I can say his name, if I can tongue tie myself, we're going to find out a lot about these guys. But I agree. Like, to me, it is JD Bertrand for sure. David says, will Golden ever realize the talent he has and just let him play?
I hope so. That's my hope. I'm hoping that it gets to be that way the rest of this year, and he doesn't overthink it and prepare and over analyze and do all these different things, because he had a little Tommy Reese syndrome to him, wanting to be the smartest guy in the room kind of a thing. Like, I hope that's not the case. I hope he does just let these guys play, because there's a lot of talent on this defense.
Concur. Chi-Town. Who will Notre Dame spy with? Do you expect to see more Tampa 2 type looks against NC State to contain him, or will there be more monster fire blitz really go after Armstrong?
Well, Irish, I think they're going to do all of the above, to be honest with you. I don't know that one is going to dominate over the other. But here's what I will also say, and this has nothing to do with Irish, but generally whenever there's a mobile quarterback, what's the first thing that fans say, Sean, on how they should defend it? Yes. Spy. Got a spy. Got to have a spy. That is not always the answer. Okay. Having a spy is not always the answer. Having a well-coached fundamental football team is the answer. Yes. Because as long as you contain him and don't let him get outside the tackles, okay, and your gap sound,
funnel him inside.
You don't need a spy. You need to rally to the football. You don't need a spy. And so I'm not a huge fan of the spy technique personally. If they do that, you can do it every now and again, maybe on a 3rd and long, or, something along those lines where you don't want him to leak out and get a cheap first down. Okay. But that is not my game plan 1st through 3rd down. Like, that's not how I would operate as a defensive coordinator.
Think about Jordan Travis. Was this in, I think it would have been the 2020 season when they came to Notre Dame Stadium. And you remember he hit some runs against Notre Dame, and Florida State kept it a bit closer than we thought that they were going to keep it. Well, it wasn't because there wasn't somebody spying on him. It was just because backside contain broke down more times than it should. It was just a simple assignment thing where the backside linebacker / backside defensive end, whoever's responsibility on a given play, that's where things broke down in that particular game against that mobile quarterback. It was just a simple thing like backside contain. And if you keep backside contain, then again, you're forcing him, you're funneling him into the middle where the traffic is, and he's much less a threat. So You're right. I mean, they might have some plays in some certain situations where they spy on him, but I don't think it's going to be all the time. Marcus Freeman kind of said as much the other day at his press conference. I just think they're going to mix things up as much as possible and try to kind of keep him guessing a little bit and keep Robert and I guessing over on the sideline as to what Notre Dame is going to do defensively.
Absolutely. I want to address this one. Tim says, I would feel more comfortable knowing that Snead is chasing the quarterback around all day. I'm uncomfortable with tackling right now. Well, you should be uncomfortable with Jalen Snead's tackling right now.
I mean,
it's not fantastic.
That's what I was going to say. If you're uncomfortable with tackling, then you can't go down that Jalen Snead needs to be on the field more mode. Right. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not the way things are playing out right now.
His reputation does not match the play on the field right now.
Right.
And that's nothing against Jalen Snead. He's he's still a young dude. He's still learning. He's still doing all of those things. He's not ready for a prime time role yet. And maybe that's not what people want to hear, and I apologize. But if you watch the tape and you watch number 3, I don't want him one-on-one with a guy in the open field right now. I just
came up a time or two last week against Tennessee State. We were sitting there together and came up. So, yeah, that's not the answer.
No. And what I will say, Philip had a good one here. And this is a very generic way of looking at it, but I agree wholeheartedly. Generate pressure, keep him in the pocket. That's how you stop him. I absolutely agree with that. Now, there's obviously ways to do that and ways to generate that pressure and all of those things. But I think Josh nailed it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You got to keep him guessing. You don't want him comfortable. Keep him in the pocket. That's how you beat him. Absolutely.
Right. God, country, Notre Dame, barbecue. If you could look into the future to only find out how Notre Dame fared in the next 20 to 30 years, would you do it? Or do you like having the mystery of each passing season?
I like the mystery. I like keeping the mystery alive. If I know what's going to happen, I lose interest really fast. That's why when I watch game film, I don't like to know what the ending is. I want to know what. Yeah, I don't. You know what I mean? I don't like to know what's going to happen. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't look into the future. I want to ride that rail, man. I want to ride that train.
Yeah, like when I was a kid, I a time or two found the Christmas presents early, and then Christmas
horrible.
Day sucks when you know what's coming, right?
Yep. I did that one time, and it was the worst Christmas ever.
I know.
Because I had to fake it, because my parents didn't know I found the gifts.
Yep.
So you had to fake the enthusiasm. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible.
I know. Like what the only way I would do it is if we're talking a Back to the Future situation where I know the results, I can go forward, then I can go back and I can bet on everything as it happens and make some money out of the whole deal. Otherwise, like I don't like binge watching my TV shows if I can help it. I like to. I actually like the week
like the
to week.
Spread? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you're old school, baby.
Like it's tough sometimes, but at the same time, it makes life a little bit more fun not knowing, and the fact that you do have to wait for a week until the next show comes out and they leave you with a cliffhanger. Like I remember Lost. It was either season 3 or season 4. I think it was season 3. I know you didn't watch Lost, but it was like the end of the season where they started doing the flash forwards, but you didn't know that they were flash forwards. And then they ended the season with Jack and Kate standing out by the airport, and Jack going, "We've got to go back, Kate. We've got to go back." And it's like, boom. And then you've got to wait 4 months, to find out until the next season starts. And spent the whole summer traumatized, but it's more fun that way. It's more fun that way when you don't know what it's going to be. Again, unless we can go back and make a little moolah on things.
Right. Because Ryan says, "Give me the sports almanac." And I get it. You want to go make some bucks, Ryan, and I appreciate that very much. Believe me, I'm ready to build the Biff Tannen Museum, but at the same time, I want to ride I haven't experienced it yet, but I would love to ride the train of a championship season for Notre Dame, game by game, just getting fired up, getting excited, going to the bowl game, pumped up, what's going to happen. And if they actually win the championship, like that would be glorious. I want to be on that ride, man. If I know
Tommy says he just started watching Lost,
and you blew it for him. Good job.
Well, I didn't blow any. I guess I blew a little bit of plot, but again, like disregard what season I was talking about. But stick with it. There's, that's like every week. I guess if you're binging, you can just go right to the next episode. But it was a lot less fun, I thought, going right into the episodes when I did a rewatch a few years back. Siggy13 says, technically time travel, this is possible. Is anyone willing to jump into a pool with a toaster? No, but I would jump into a hot tub time machine. So
hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Play a little White Snake or whatever that was. They had. Speaking of which, Tommy says, if you could know the date and the details of your death, would you want to know? Absolutely not. I've thought about this before. No way.
Have you really? Have you? I don't think I've put a ton of thought into it. But
I haven't put a ton, but like in certain situations, it's come up, like would I want to know exactly how many days, months, minutes, whatever I've got left? I don't think so. That would be a little bit too depressing for me.
It would be, especially when you got close to the date. Like, well,
I know.
Here we go. Like,
I know.
No, would not like that.
Exactly. Nick, over under the Notre Dame turnover margin of +1.5 against North Carolina State.
Oh, plus. Okay. I skimmed this question earlier and I okay. I would like to say over because I think Armstrong is going to turn the ball over and I don't think Sam Hartman is. Now, eventually Sam Hartman is going to throw a pick or two. It's going to happen, right? I just don't think it's going to happen this week. So I will say over.
I agree. I say over as well. I think Notre Dame is at least going to win the turnover margin. I will say that. Is that a cop-out?
Oh, well, it's not a cop-out, but I think they're going to win the turnover margin as well. And I think an early an early turnover that Notre Dame gets. So an early NC State turnover is going to set the tone for this game.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. DJ, first hostile environment for the freshmen. How do you prepare them for it?
This is a group of freshmen that is unlike really any other group of freshmen that I've actually seen at Notre Dame, in at least that I can remember, especially the freshmen that are getting the solid playing time. So the freshmen that are getting playing time on a regular basis. Jaden Greathouse. Anybody worried about Jaden Greathouse?
No.
Rico Flores, he's handled himself like a friggin' professional since he walked on campus.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about him. Jeremiah Love, definitely not worried about him. I think he's going to be just fine as well. Other than that, who are the Christian Gray? He'll probably get some snaps every now and again. Like those 4 kids, I am not worried about them in any way, shape, or form. There will be some freshmen that get some time on special teams and things like that. No, I'm not worried.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already played in a big environment in Ireland. I'm not concerned about like road environment. It's not like, especially it's not like they're going to the big house for this game.
It's NC State. Like,
yeah.
It's the first big Power 5 game on the. I get all of that. But
come on, they don't even play Inner Sandman at NC State. I mean, how hostile can it be?
And even that was overblown. Like it was a cool entrance, but it did nothing to affect that game whatsoever.
I mean, we've seen that at least twice now in the last 5-6 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And in both cases, now I guess the second time the game was a little bit closer maybe than we thought it was going to be, but still Notre Dame ended up winning. Once the song's over and the snot and the spit start flying out there on the field, none of that stuff matters anymore.
No. And this is, like I said, this is a different group of freshmen, man. Like they're going to be ready.
Yeah. By the way, how is Indiana's coolest dean, D'Addario?
Today was fantastic. So not a suspension amongst. So life is good, man. Life was good today. So thank you for asking, D-Troll Hunter. Life is really good.
I'm saving a couple of these for rapid fire. I'm trying to decide which ones that I want to still get in here. Do you think Notre Dame needs to score 35 plus to make a statement?
Ooh, 35 plus would be a statement. There's no doubt about it. I don't think they need to score 35 plus to make a statement. I think to make a statement, they would have to win by a couple scores. So at least in the double digits, like 14, 17. Like I think that would send a message to a degree. But if they did score 35 and it wasn't like 35, 32 or something like that, or 31, then that's not the message that I think you want to send at that point. Like Notre Dame can't win in a shootout. That doesn't send a message. Defense has to step up.
Right.
So if they score 35 and NC State scores 14, that's a message, right? So I think it just depends on what the other score is.
Ooh, Ryan bringing some heat. If Notre Dame had to come out to a rock song every home game, what would you choose? Vince knows next to nothing about music. I was going to ask him about Jimmy Buffett, the late great.
I know about Jimmy Buffett. He's enjoying cheeseburgers in paradise.
You might know about Jimmy Buffett.
I know
that's probably one of 2 songs that you know.
Right? I know his music. I wouldn't call him rock and roll either, though. So.
No, that's like Jimmy Buffett. I mean, that's very true. Like I was actually playing the Jimmy Buffett Songs You Know by Heart CD today, and that was one like when I was in college. That was kind of that was like a very fun time. We played a lot of Jimmy Buffett. The drinks would flow and all that kind of. That's what Jimmy Buffett was about, right? Like I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows, and boat drinks and all that kind of good stuff. But I remember, my dad, my parents listened to a lot of country music when I was growing up, and it seemed like Buffett was like not like necessarily rock and roll, but not necessarily country, but a lot of his songs, like whether it was Margaritaville or Cheeseburger in Paradise, kind of ended up on a lot of different radio and that kind of thing. So, but I digress. The rock song, I would just go Motley Crue, Kickstart My Heart. That's where I would go, because there's a big like rev at the top, and like the engine is revving up at the start, and then boom, 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 and like Vince probably doesn't know it, but I would go Crue, Kickstart My Heart.
Hey, this is a good one right here.
Thunderstruck, that's a good one too. I like that.
Like, that's a good one.
Yep. We used to use Thunderstruck, but I think we used it for a season or two in the old Notre Dame baseball days in our open.
Nice.
That's
a good one. But that's a good one.
Yep. All right. Well, I tell you what, Vince, I'm going to save the rest of these. You ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go, baby.
Let's do it. So, I got to find my questions here as I wanted to start rapid fire. Fill in the blank.
Okay.
Notre Dame's second leading rusher this season will be blank.
Honestly, I think it's going to end up being Jeremiah Love. He has really impressed me with some long runs and limited amount of action. And I said this on Monday, but Brian leaned over to me when he actually wanted to talk to me. And he said, those other guys better watch out because 12 is coming. And I think he's right. I think he's going to, pick up a bunch of carries moving forward. And I think he's going to make the most of them. So I'm going to go with the freshman.
You know what? I was saying all offseason that I thought Jadarian Price. But
Yep.
Just the way things have worked out so far, I tend to agree. I think that what the burst, the explosiveness, everything that Jeremiah Love has, what he brings to that room, his breakaway ability.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be him as well. Now, Jadarian Price still has some of that, and it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these reps have split. But I just think that everything that you just kind of detailed there and what Jeremiah Love has already done and what he can continue to do, I think that it's going to be him. I think the biggest thing is just kind of continuing to make sure that he can pick up the blitz when he's out there on the field.
Sure.
If he's called on in that situation. Because again, there are checks at the line of scrimmage. You can't just go out there and say, we're going to run it. And then they show, something else and it's time to throw it. And then you got to be able to pick up a blitz. So I think it's going to end up being Jeremiah Love as well. And again, I wouldn't have been saying that obviously a month ago.
Well, and the other thing that's going to be interesting to see this week is, since Devin Ford, I'm assuming, is probably going to be out. I don't know if that's been officially announced, or I'm speculating at this point. But if he is out, how that delineation of touches goes.
We will probably find out tomorrow when we get the noon Zoom.
So when you subtract 1 from the 5, those carries have to go someplace, or those reps have to go somewhere. I'm wondering if they go to 12.
Good question. This one goes to 12 is what you're saying. Not just 11, goes to 12. Fill in the blank. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? It's blank. That Stanford athletic director, Bernard Muir, says based on what he knows, the Notre Dame Stanford series is going to continue to be played annually after Stanford joins the ACC.
Disappointing. That's what it is. It's disappointing. I mean, I love how he's like, well, based on what I know, doesn't make you sound super credible, Mr. Muir, but I hope he's wrong. I hope that once he's a member, that they're a member of the ACC, that they just get on the same rotation as the other ACC schools. That would be my personal hope. I hope that it's not we're going to do that every single year.
Yeah, and that's kind of when this news was coming out beforehand, before it became official, like to me that was the benefit from a Notre Dame standpoint, is that they wouldn't have to play Stanford every year. Now, look, you and I, neither one of us is that thrilled about the Stanford series. Jack Swarbrick and Notre Dame, they obviously consider Stanford a rival. They have done their best to make it a rival. I get the academic connection and all that different kind of stuff. Is it really a rivalry, though? I don't think most fans think it's a rivalry, especially given the current state of Stanford football. They've got a ways to go to get it built back up. And, let's be honest, there are really two brief windows in time when Stanford football has ever really been good. And we just came out of one of them. So the odds that they're going to be good year in and year out, I thought it was a good thing that if Stanford was going to join the ACC, very similar to Pittsburgh and Boston College, by the way. Notre Dame used to have fairly regular continuing series with both of those schools. Not that they played them each and every year, but they had pretty, fair for a stretch there. They were playing both BC and Pittsburgh almost annually. And then those two teams joined the ACC and they became part of the ACC scheduling agreement.
Yes.
And so you're still playing them, but you're not playing them every year, which is what I thought that the Stanford thing would do, which I think would be better for Notre Dame. I think that, again, we've talked about it before, especially with UCLA becoming part of the Big Ten next year and the NBC TV contract that now includes UCLA, obviously the entire Big Ten, which includes UCLA and USC. I felt like that might be an option worth exploring that would be better than Stanford. But apparently, at least based on what Bernard is saying, and Bernard, by the way, I guess it's been a while, roughly 20 years-ish ago, he was an assistant athletic director at Notre Dame, but he's been the AD at Stanford for a long time. But neither one of us like it, but our opinions
don't matter.
Don't
Not
matter.
even a little. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Nah.
I want to get to this Brian Kelly thing. So I'm going to start with this.
Oh, you're skipping. All right.
Yeah. Ray asks, wrong one. Josh asks, they both have purple avatars. That's what threw me off. Josh asks, is Coach Freeman a better coach than Brian Kelly already?
No, I would say no, because Brian Kelly does have a ton of experience. He has had a ton of success. It's going to take a little while for Marcus Freeman to catch up to Brian Kelly. Plain and simple. Now, is he a better coach for Notre Dame in this moment? Yes, I will say that, but not as an overall coach. I don't think that's fair. It's not fair to Brian Kelly, to be honest with you. And I don't think we've seen enough from Marcus Freeman to definitively say that. Now, am I happy that Marcus Freeman is the coach and it's not Brian Kelly? Absolutely. That doesn't make him a better overall coach over the long run. Brian Kelly's had a lot of success in his career, right? And we think that Marcus Freeman is that guy to take Notre Dame to the next level, but he hasn't done it yet. Talk to me when Brian Kelly or when Marcus Freeman wins a New Year's Six or wins a Final Four game or wins a national championship. We'll revisit this question. But as we sit right now on September 6th, I'm going to go with no.
Brian Kelly still has a lot more experience. I think you made a great differentiation. Marcus Freeman is the better coach for Notre Dame right now because it begins and ends with the recruiting.
Yeah.
But there's also other, regardless of what anyone outside wants to say, the recruiting, the level of recruiting has gotten better under Marcus Freeman. And the recruiting of specific positions, the skill positions. Like, look at where Brian Kelly is right now at LSU. They brought in some transfer cornerbacks like LSU, like that's in addition to the quarterback issues that have followed Brian Kelly, like the secondary, like look at the issue the secondary was in recruiting when Brian Kelly was here. So and look at where they are now, just a year after he's gone. Both the running back room and the receiver room and the secondary, all three of those skill position sets are leaps and bounds better right now under Marcus Freeman than they were under Brian Kelly just a couple of years ago. So start with that. One thing Marcus Freeman has shown the willingness to do is adapt and be a fairly introspective guy on his own, whereas Brian Kelly had to be forced into those situations to really look within. And Marcus Freeman, not that everyone has to be a buddy coach, and I'm not saying that he's a buddy coach, but he obviously, I saw this thing with Michael Mayer over the weekend. I think it's a fairly old interview, but he was asked about the difference between Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman, and he's like, Marcus Freeman's around in the summertime when we're doing workouts.
Right.
Brian Kelly wasn't around in the summertime. And he said,
Nope.
no, this isn't a knock on Brian Kelly, but I mean, all you've got to do is say it, and it's automatically a knock on Brian Kelly. There's just a night and day difference in their personalities, the way they go about things on a daily basis. And so again, I think that Brian Kelly is still the better coach because he's got 3 decades of experience 3+ decades of experience as a head coach compared to a season plus for Marcus Freeman. But I still think that, as you said, Freeman is the better coach for Notre Dame right now.
Yeah. And somebody said, what about Brian Kelly in his second year at Notre Dame? You can't compare the two because Brian Kelly took over a dumpster fire at Notre Dame, and it took him a little while to rebuild it.
You still have to give it to Brian Kelly that he rebuilt and turned Notre Dame into a developmental program. And that's the thing. One of the things that jumps out at me about Marcus Freeman as well is the developmental aspect to it. Like when you talk about the depth and the fact that they spent training camp working in 2s with 1s, like number 2 guys we're mixing in with the other ones and going up against number 1s on the other side of the ball. Like, again, for a second-year head coach, think about like where Charlie Weiss was. Like again, that's night and day different for the way Charlie Weiss ran his program because he came from an NFL background. Marcus Freeman coached under Luke Fickell, who, along with Brian Kelly, I think that you can argue are 2 of the better developmental program type builder guys in college football. Like, again, no matter what you think of Brian Kelly's personality and whether you love him or hate him, you still have to recognize the fact that he rebuilt Notre Dame, got him to a championship game and a couple of playoff games as well because of the way he built the program. You can pick apart his recruiting and a lot of different, other ways he did things, but you still have to appreciate the developmental aspect to the program that he runs.
Yep. And I will always give that credit to him. And he brought Notre Dame back to a place that was a perennial 10-win type team. No doubt about it. The knock on Brian Kelly is the big games. And he proved not too long ago that that's still an issue.
Right. That's exactly right. So, speaking of Brian Kelly, this was on the docket for today. And so Brian Kelly, last week in the lead up to the Florida State game, Brian Kelly was quoted as saying, quote, "We're going to beat the heck out of Florida State," end quote. So on Tuesday, yesterday, Brian Kelly said this: "I think you all know me. I'm pretty careful with what I say and how I said it. Never have I been cavalier or disrespectful to an opponent in my 33 years. So if somebody wants to prop up a comment and inflate it into something that it is not, that's what social media is about today. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Florida State coach Mike Norvell. I know who the opponent was. It's just not in my background or nature to make those kinds of comments." So that is the quote from Brian Kelly, saying that he never said that leading up to the Florida State game. Well, fortunately for us, here's a piece of audio from Brian Kelly's coaches show last week.
I think we're in a really good position in year 2. Look, I will say that there are still some areas that need to be improved. We're going to take 15 freshmen on this trip and 14 transfers. So nearly 40% of this travel roster are going to go overnight for the first time with LSU. So, and that's not a disclaimer of any kind. We're going to go beat the heck out of Florida State. But I guess what I'm saying is we're still developing our football team with new players, freshman players, transfer players. So we're still in that process of developing, and it's only going to get better.
So there you go, Vince.
I mean,
it's pretty clear there what he said.
I mean, he got cheers. He knows what the crowd wants to hear, number one. Number two, the best part about that is so Brian Kelly, he was already making excuses before the game even kicked off.
And then he tried to say it wasn't an excuse.
Right. I mean, that's the best part about that whole thing.
I know.
He lined up the excuses. 15 freshmen, 14 transfers, and we're still building the program. We're still going to beat the heck out of Florida State, but, there's some issues here. Like, come on, man.
Gonkers 44. I thought this was a Notre Dame show. Nobody's forcing you to listen right now.
Nope.
We've said this before. This is the rapid fire segment. We talk about things other than Notre Dame. Brian Kelly used to be the coach at Notre Dame. We just had a question about Brian Kelly. So we answered the question about Brian Kelly. And quite frankly, when we get the chance, when it's as juicy as this and it's just such low-hanging fruit, I mean, how are we going to resist, this opportunity? Because, to me, it's fitting that Notre Dame is at North Carolina State this week because, it's the first time the Irish have played there since Brian Kelly criticized the center for bad snaps in a hurricane, right? And then at the same time, all this other stuff comes up. Brian Kelly is at his best on Monday and Tuesday when it comes to comments, whatever day the press conference happens to be on. That's when Brian Kelly is best during the week.
Oh, yeah.
When he gets to sit back and kind of polish up what he thinks the questions are going to be and have answers ready to go and stuff like that. That's when Brian Kelly is best. Where Brian Kelly is at his worst is after the game, when he has to think on his feet and, when questions kind of come at him that maybe he's not ready for it. But even that answer, he seemed like he had his response ready to go because like you pointed out, Vince, he's already making excuses about the freshmen and the transfers. Here's what I know. After LSU's loss to Florida State, Brian Kelly now has 5 losses of 20-plus points against top 5 ranked teams in just 37 games played against top 5 ranked teams. He has the 3rd most losses all time to top 5 teams by 20-plus points. The other 2 coaches who are ahead of him, Woody Hayes and Joe Paterno, each coached more than 100 games. So congrats on that, Brian Kelly.
Those are just facts. Those are just facts. And in case our buddy's still here, this show is called IB Nation Sports Talk. So we're talking about sports. Just throwing it out there. And I do
beat the heck out of Florida State, but
I love it.
There you go. All right, now we'll shift gears and we won't talk about Brian Kelly until the next time he puts his foot in his mouth. And
because look, that is national news, baby. That's not Notre Dame news. That is national news that he's trying to walk back a comment that he's claiming he never said. Oh, hilarious.
It's very Brian Kelly. So, Vince, how much differently are you looking at the Duke game now after the loss to Clemson the other night? Or the win over Clemson, the other night?
Not that much different, to be honest with you, because I think Duke was always kind of that trap game on the schedule to begin with. And I knew Riley Leonard was a good quarterback. I knew Mike Elko was a good head coach and what he did last year. I think they're a plucky team. I think they've got some talent. I think that both teams played incredibly sloppy in the first half of that game, first of all. And I don't know. Yes, the Duke played better than Clemson on that night, but neither team played that great overall. And so I'm not more afraid of Duke as a Notre Dame person, as a Notre Dame fan or analyst. I'm not more afraid of Duke. I was actually less impressed with Clemson, I think, coming out of that game than I was more impressed with Duke, if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Clemson really beat themselves. Unforced errors with the turnovers, I felt like. Now, Duke was a team that made its way on turnovers last year. They were, I believe, 2nd in the nation in terms of turnover margin last year. And they came up with, more turnovers against Clemson. It was, Clemson moved the ball and got themselves down into the red zone a couple of times and then turned the ball over. So credit Duke for doing what they did, but my opinion of Duke has not drastically changed because of that. If anything, my opinion about Clemson has changed more. I still think Duke is going to be a tough game. Notre Dame's going to have to go on the road the week after Ohio State, different factors like that. And yeah, like Tim is saying, Duke tried not to win also. They just
That's true.
That was really kind of like the Florida State LSU game. Both first halves of those games were just brutal. And then in the second half, floodgates kind of open for each of the teams that ended up winning those games, and they ended up it ended up looking more lopsided than what it was. So Duke's still going to be a tough game, but I don't consider them any more tough, any like all of a sudden this indomitable force that Notre Dame is going to face after that Clemson game.
Because look, Notre Dame's going to face quarterbacks that are better than Riley Leonard, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to face teams that are better than Duke. It's just where it lands on the schedule and all of those different things. And I think Tim B actually made a really, really good point. He said it's not a trap game now. They did us a favor since Notre Dame will take them more seriously.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Notre Dame wasn't going to take them seriously because that's disrespectful to Duke and disrespectful.
But you have even more reason to now. Yeah,
exactly. So I don't want to say they take them more seriously. Of course, they're going to take them seriously. But now it's like, okay, hey, these guys can play. All right, let's go. So I agree with him.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt.
So speaking of that game, did you see this thing about their quarterback, Riley Leonard? Of course, he has the game of his life and the upset of Clemson. So he goes on social media. He asks his professor for an extension for his homework that was due that night. And his professor's like, nope, your teammates got their homework in. They planned ahead. So who's right? Who's wrong in this? Should the professor have given him some extra time considering what he just did Monday night?
I mean, you know what I do for a living. So I kind of have to say this, although I would have said it to any, like when I was when I was a teacher, I didn't give breaks to athletes by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, a lot of times I made them work harder because they were usually my athletes. But no, he does not deserve any extra time to get his assignment in. There's no reason he couldn't have gotten his assignment in, especially with the way that school is structured these days. Everything's online. Like, there's no excuse. I guarantee you the hotel they were staying in, if they were off campus or whatever, had Wi-Fi. It wasn't even a road game for him. No excuse not to have your assignment turned in, bro Hammer. You gotta get your stuff done.
That's right, Mr. Big Time. You had all day Monday. Like he had Monday morning. He could have been doing some
absolutely
work. You go to Duke. You got to go to class.
Seriously,
on, get your homework turned in.
Seriously, how big of an assignment could it have been? School's been in session for like 2 weeks.
That's what I was thinking. Like, already you've got this big thing you got to turn in. Come on.
Yeah.
Thanks for the super chat, Tyler. Vince, you have the Cam Hart and Xavier Watts fan club jackets ready because I think they both have interceptions.
Dude,
week.
If they do that, this game is not going to be close. It's not going to be close at all if both of those guys have picks. I'll say it. So, yeah, I'm ready, baby. I'm ready. Members only.
I agree. Ryan Roberts, rank these Toms. Tom Petty, Tommy Guns, Tom Brady.
Those are such random, like from three corners of the planet.
Yes.
Situation. I'm going to go with that exact order that it's written right here. Tom Petty, Tommy Guns, then Tom Brady.
I agree. I would put it like that as well. I mean, I've got a whole discography of Tom Petty out in my living room that every Saturday and Sunday morning, I about every other, I pop them in. I've got my nice. Tom Petty going, like my daughter's favorite song, I Won't Back Down. It's like, so we walk around singing that.
Down.
There you go. And Brady, he's just Brady. I mean, you've got Tommy Gruns, the king of Massillon. I mean, are you kidding me?
Seriously.
I like that one, though. And then final question, at least for now, how does the new clock impact this particular game? Does one team have an advantage, in your opinions?
Have you noticed a difference with the clock yet?
Was the exact thing I'm going to say. I mean, does the game really look that different with the new clock rules this year?
Like honestly, I said, there's more commercials. I think
I think it was after the Navy game. I think Jesse and I were talking about it. Notre Dame and Navy actually ran more plays in this year's game than last year's game. With the new rules, they ran more plays this year than last year. I just think that everyone has built this thing up. It's like it's only shaved about 5 minutes and a handful of plays off the game. So I just think there is minimal impact that this clock rule is going to have.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't really even noticed, to be honest with you, because when I start looking at the clock stopping and starting, it's when they're in those drives at the end of a half or end of a game,
Yeah.
and those rules are still the same. And so I'll tell you right now, the Tennessee State game felt very long to me because it felt like there was even more commercials than normal, and it was still 3.5 hours. So I'm not sure what we're doing here, but it's not making the game any shorter.
Yeah. So far. Tom says they say the national average is 10 less plays per game. Yeah, I think it's like 5 per team or something.
Yeah,
like that.
that's nothing to me.
Yeah.
Like that's negligible is what it is.
Yeah. And basically the way they've explained this is they're looking at the cum effect on this, because over the course of an entire season, when you expand that out, if you eliminate like 8 to 10 plays per game, by the end of the season, you have eliminated essentially the same amount of plays as one entire game. And the reason, again, the way they've explained it, the reason they're doing it is because next year you're expanding the playoff. So you're going to be adding a lot more games for the teams that make the playoffs. So they're trying to, take away some of the impacts and stuff like that. But at the same time, they're not that concerned about helmet-to-helmet hits on kickoff. So
seriously,
it's at the bottom of the priority list, apparently.
Terrible.
All right, well, good show tonight. We're going to wrap it up with that. Jesse and I have a fantasy football draft tonight. He'll be here tomorrow, so we'll let you know how that goes. I've got the number 1 pick in my draft tonight.
Oh,
first time in I don't know how long I've had the number 1 pick. So
now, is that because you came in last year?
No, we did the.
Okay, all right.
We've got some new teams, so they did the draw out of the hat kind of thing.
Okay.
So
not going with Travis Kelce, probably.
No, I won't be going with Travis Kelce or Cooper Kupp.
Hey, real quick, we got about 10 seconds left in the chat. Who does Sean take first in the draft? Come on.
Oh, I know who I'm taking, baby.
Well, I know. I'm sure you do know, but I'd like to see what people think you should do.
Number 1 is not the problem. It's like, you get number 1, that means, we've got a 10-player league. That means I don't draft again until 20. So that's, I'm taking Justin Jefferson. I'll just let the whole world know.
TJ Fallon, he's in there with you.
As much as I want to take one of the 2 running backs, either Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler, because there's like more, there are fewer like high-end running backs and there are more receivers. I'm concerned about injury, more concerned with the injury with the running back. So I'm going to take the most productive receiver that I can, because we also play in a points, PPR, point per catch, point per reception league. So
makes sense.
All right. It's a good day because I'm not. BK says he got the number 1 pick in his league. Have you drafted already? Who'd you take? Did you take Justin Jefferson? Any good rookie running backs? I'm eyeballing a rookie potentially.
See, now you can't give away your secrets now.
Pick. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't think Jesse's watching, but we're drafting here in a couple hours, so I got to get this show posted and all that kind of stuff after the fact. All right. Well, thanks again. Hit the like button on your way out. We've got, I saw somebody complimenting the whiteboard earlier. Jess will have some whiteboard for us tomorrow. We'll hit, I believe, a little offense and a little defense for this Notre Dame, North Carolina State matchup. So whiteboard Thursday, we'll have some Marcus Freeman comments as well from his noon Zoom with the media. And of course, more rapid fire after that. Hit the like button and subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.